Wendell, what's going on?
I think Joan Rivers just died.
Died? No. I think actually what happened was the animate undead spell just wore off.
Hey, I've got zombie golden girls, so I don't know. That's one of the things in our office.
There we go. I turned on our cameras again. I had them all turned off for that weird ending. That thing in the beginning was our moment of silence for Joan Rivers, wasn't it? I think.
Was
I
it?
don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know what just happened. All right, we're going to have some new shirts very soon. I've been going through all these shirt submissions, and there are some very good ones in there. You know, there's a lot of people that keep telling me that they want shirts with our likenesses on them, and I'm just so weird about putting my likeness on a shirt. I feel like that's very narcissistic and strange. I don't know, but there's a lot of them that they were submitting designs with like us on the shirts. So maybe we'll let one of those slide because it looks like everyone in the audience really wants one of those, but nothing that's too detailed. It would have maybe a face palm or something, or maybe the one with just your eyes, you know, Wendell. Just like that. Maybe that would work.
I saw that one. Yeah, I thought that one was very clever. It's like, that's kind of fun.
You know, if we go anywhere, you have to dress up like a ninja.
I almost tweeted. It's like, is anybody at Dragon Con? Because walk up and say hi to Rorschach.
Is Dragon Con going on right now?
No, it was over last weekend.
Oh, damn. All right, speaking of things that you do not want to miss, our gaming giveaway, or our game giveaway. Now, Digital Storm, those guys over there, they've been pretty cool. You should go check out all their systems. They have decided to give to the community of Tech Syndicate, and they're going to be giving away one game per week for the next few weeks. Giving away one last week. We were going to announce the winner like today. And then this is the second contest, so you guys can go and re-enter. And the way this works is you guys get to pick any game, I believe, that's under $59 or $60 or less. So like any of the $59 games on Steam, and then they're going to gift it to you. So easy. This one, we're making the video before the contest has started, but hey, there's a heads up and there's a link in the description. So go get down to business. Also, thanks to all our tech support members. You guys are awesome. Moving right along. All right, the first thing I want to talk about here, Microsoft. They've decided. So what happened was the courts said that, hey, we really want to get some data, but it's on one of your a server in Ireland. So you got to give us that data. And Microsoft was like, well, no, it's outside of your jurisdiction. It's in Ireland. And the courts were like, no, you're an American company in the USA, and I don't care if the data is on the moon. It belongs to us. And that was the court order. Gavel went down. That was the end. And Microsoft said, we're not going to do it. Go ahead.
Usually I'm the voice of reason here, but the Department of Justice order actually said those things word for word. It was really, we are entitled to all data on all servers on the entire planet. And it's like, whoa, DOJ, what's going on?
And so Microsoft was like, well, we're not going to. I don't know, Microsoft's kind of acting like a French company. We're not going to. We're going to have a sandwich.
It was slightly more weird than that. You see, what happened was Google. It's like I'm just used to like Google having to deal with this stuff here. Microsoft went to the court and said, "Can we appeal this? Because the judge has ordered this, and we think we ought to be able to appeal it. And this we ought to have a say in this." And the court said, "No, you can't appeal the order unless you're found in contempt." So they have to defy the order and be found in contempt, and then they can appeal and have a proceeding. But it's like, how that just doesn't make sense. And this, the maneuvering here reminded me a lot of the LavaBit case. The people that were Snowden's email provider that did the encrypted email, and where the guy was like, I don't want to be in contempt, but this seems crazy. How do I do this? And it was a secret proceeding, and there wasn't enough time to get a lawyer. And this is for those of you overseas, we have 3 branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial, and I'm really worried about the judicial branch of the government. The other 2 are just corrupt as hell, and now the judicial branch? Oh, no!
See, the funny thing here for me is that, and one of the reasons that Microsoft is doing this will do irreparable damage to all American media companies. Everyone's going to start looking for companies that are not based in America because they're going to be like, well, listen, if we're working with an American company and the DOJ or any, agency in the USA wants to get at any information on our servers, well, the government's just going to grant them access to it, and that's going to create all kinds of strange issues with laws overseas, but the government doesn't care. They're just going to do it. So it's really, really going to be damaging. And we've even got, different companies, for instance, here Verizon chimed in and said that this would be a dramatic conflict with foreign data protection laws. Apple and Cisco chimed in, and there's PDFs here for all of these, and said that they would put the tech sector at risk of being sanctioned by foreign governments, and that the U.S. should seek cooperation with foreign nations via treaties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That wording kind of bothers me just because that makes me feel like, the government's just going to go over there and shake hands and agree to trade data back and forth. But, I mean, still, just the way that they're being so cavalier and demanding data that does not reside on their, sovereign soil is very strange. So Microsoft's standing up for that. They're also trying to get an appeal. And then they've got the entire U.S. tech industry waiting. But let's just theoretically say that everything goes wrong for Microsoft and they are forced to turn over that data, and the U.S. violates Irish laws by taking data from from the UK, or what part of Ireland was it in? I'm not sure if it was Northern Ireland, but anyway, let's just say that all that happens. What is that going to do to the tech industry in the USA? That's going to destroy, pretty much all confidence around the world of the tech. It's already pretty low because of all the NSA spying and all that sort of nonsense that's going on. But that's going to do some severe damage, and also going to make it very difficult for web and IT startups, especially like cloud startups and data storage startups and that sort of thing. It's going to make it really hard for them to do anything in the USA. It's very sad.
I think that now let's be clear here. Microsoft, whenever we talk about this, there's always the connotation that this is an altruistic move. This is not an altruistic move. These are companies that do business globally, and this affects their bottom line. Microsoft is doing this for no other reason than they are a global company, and these emerging markets they depend on. A lot of the stuff that with the Nokia takeover and the other markets that Microsoft is moving into, if they are not trusted, they will not take over in those markets. Cisco has already come out with press releases and our earnings are damaged. This is damaging. That's damaging. Because pre-Snowden, the reality was that we would say that, oh yes, this data is protected. We want nothing to do with it, but we had access to it anyway through our intelligence organization. And apparently, the intelligence organizations were sharing it with low-level common plain brown package law enforcement, which is terrifying enough. And now it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be quite as out in the open in that. And so you see more of this sort of legal maneuvering at this level. It's really not a good precedent for the USA as a country, but in terms of things worldwide, it's perhaps worse because there's not really there hasn't really been a Bill of Rights for an individual's data. It's like the Magna Carta. There's not a Magna Carta for digital rights abroad. You ought to be able to have certain human rights when you're dealing with an individual. It should be the same thing with the person's data abroad, but there's not even any kind of standard for that. It's just sort of, whatever we can do with it, and that's the problem.
I'm glad you brought that up because I thought about that earlier and it just slipped my mind right now, but that is really important for everyone out there to remember that Microsoft was not trying to be the good guy here. I can see the boardroom meeting right now. They're all sitting there saying like, do we fight the U.S. government or do we stand up, for this? Which one is going to cost us the least amount of money and the least amount of hassle? So that's where the decision came in, and it actually was going to cost them less to fight the U.S. government than it was to turn over this data and then do irreparable damage to their reputation worldwide. That was the boardroom meeting that happened, and that's why they decided to do this, not for any, we're going to be a good guy. No, none of that crap. And I think the same decision would have been the same at Google. They would have been a pragmatic decision to say, like, do we turn this over or do we fight the government? There's not a lot of good guys out there. There's some guys out there who have tried to line their will up with the will of the public, if you know what I mean, so that they benefit by doing things that are better. But I don't think there's any good guys out there really when it comes down to it, when you got these companies that are watching their bottom line. Anyway, speaking of watching the bottom line, a bunch of Georgia auto dealers have been watching Tesla's bottom line, and they are upset because Tesla sold 173 cars from a factory direct store right outside of Atlanta What the hell? That should just happen there. I clicked on the background and something weird happened. And apparently, if you're doing like a factory direct thing, you're only allowed to sell 150 cars a year, and all the dealers want them completely shut down. And I don't think we've really taken a really good look at the dealer's perspective, right? So dealers, they're middlemen, right? They get their cars from the factory, they have service departments, and there's an interesting video halfway down here, I think it was probably paid for by a bunch of dealers, showing how they are the moms and pops. And then the big companies come in and they don't care about the people, and they're always like, you know, you think you're going to get a better deal, but really the dealerships or the car manufacturers, not the dealerships, if they come in and make a private store like an Apple store or whatever, but it's a GMC store, they're still going to have to pay for air conditioning and salespeople and everything else. So they're saying that you're not going to be able to negotiate price, and there's going to be the price is going to be the same, so it doesn't matter. So the dealers are really saying that like this is just going to hurt us. And they're also saying that, look, when we sell cars, we pay a ton of taxes every year, billions of dollars in taxes every year. So that's the dealer side of thing. And they're upset that Tesla is able to, just come in there and not have a private dealer. They come in there and they just have Tesla, It's not Billy Bob's Tesla or Main Street Tesla or whatever. It's just Tesla. So they're trying to get rid of them in Georgia. So that was that side of the story. I don't know, what do you want to fill in Tesla's side of the story? How do you feel about that?
Well, I would also add that on the dealerships, like you have to look at the historical context of how dealerships came to be, during the automotive revolution. Detroit was kind of a mecca eventually for a lot of the production lines and that sort of thing. The distribution network in America was not really that great. It might take weeks or months to get something from Maine to California. And so it just wasn't convenient for America to have these super megacorps that were distributing cars and dealing with the end users directly. I mean, there just wasn't the infrastructure in place to deal with it. Dealerships also had an important legal function, and that is that historically, in the early 20th century and through the mid-20th century, federal laws were really only built to deal with federal crimes, criminal acts. And if I bought a car from a dealership in, Michigan or somewhere, and I'm from out of state, and I wanted to, something went wrong, and I wanted to have them deal with that. That was a civil matter. It wasn't a federal matter. There were not a lot of federal laws for consumer protection. There weren't really any until very recently in history, and so local dealerships provided local jurisdiction for things like small claims court and being able to get civil redress of grievances that you would have with these local businesses. So it was very important to have a local presence for these types of purchases, because these were very large purchases for a typical American person or a typical American family. So in that sense, dealers have served an important historical purpose. But at the same time, this is a new technology, and I'm not sure that we should shut out a new technology because the old guard network. I mean, if you look at like GMC, like the DeLorean, and some of the previous engineering things that have occurred in Detroit with internal combustion engines, I would say that the automotive industry as a whole has behaved anti-competitively to new players in that market. And it seems that they're trying to behave anti-competitively here against Tesla under the guise of saying, oh, well, we have to comply with all this stuff. But I'm not really sure that means we should stick our head in the sand with new technology, because Tesla is doing stuff with new technology effectively and commercially viably that these other companies that have had a head start on this, I mean, if we're going to entrust these other companies like Ford and I don't know who the big automotive makers are anymore because of all the mergers and buyouts and bankruptcies and whatever, but because we've put so much trust in those companies, they haven't really done anything new technologically. They're just sort of station keeping. So it seems like the market should have something to deal with that, and so that's sort of the whole enchilada. It is, I mean, there is something to their argument, but you've got to take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, the thing about their argument is that I've always been in favor of mom and pop stores over large corporate stores, but I'm talking usually like Walmart versus like a general store in town. That's what I'm talking about usually, or a store that makes handcrafted artisan, whatever hippie hipster stuff. I'm usually more in favor of that. But the thing about the car thing is I don't see dealers as being mom and pop. I see them being as more of a middleman, and I've always been against middlemen because in this day and age, especially the information age, they're just another layer. So that's why I don't know exactly how to feel. I'm probably more on Tesla's side because I don't know. I think all the automakers should not have to deal with middlemen, and all these guys who are now selling cars and stuff like that. Maybe they can go learn a trade or something. I don't know what they would do, but yeah, I'm just not for middlemen, and that's what I see them as, dealers.
I think if we really wanted to do this as fairly as possible, I think that these electric cars should be classified as a totally different thing than the internal combustion engine. And the reason for that is you could not take an ASE certified mechanic and turn them loose on a Tesla. It would just never happen. Not unlike, I don't know what the equivalent would have been at the turn of the century, but if you had, I don't know, a Wainwright and, a horse person to deal with carriages and horses and whatnot, I don't know that you would turn them loose on the Ford Model T. I mean, it's like, hey, Doc, my horse isn't feeling good. And, Bob, the Wainwright, he needs to do whatever with my wheels. And it's like, well, yeah, let's have that guy work on the Model T. That sounds great. So maybe they should be classified as different things, even though functionally they're identical. I think the dealers, because they are. I mean, this is a car, that's a car. They're the same. They're different. I don't know. Yeah. So is that in that regard? Are they much? I mean, can you take your horse to your dealership and get them serviced? There's something to that argument, but I haven't really thought it out.
They gave my horse gasoline, and now he's dead.
Oh no.
Let's take a second to check out our sponsor, Squarespace. We are currently using Squarespace for our Epic Pants store. You guys should go there and buy everything. I've decided that you should do that. It's been working out great. I'll get to that in just a second. Squarespace is a website that allows you to design clean and elegant websites using your content as the feature. That means there's no garbage. There's no crazy flash and all that stuff. It's all content forward based upon the creative that you provide. Now this can be a really handy way if you want to spin up a quick website that looks very clean and professional, but it's also going to be good for people if you have clients who need something fast that looks good, and maybe you're on a budget. You can just totally use this. Wendell uses this for some of his clients, and you can use it. There's several different templates. You start with a template, and then you just fill it in with your content, and you can get really nerdy and change it around if you like, but you can set up shops very easily. It integrates with Stripe. Also really good for galleries and that sort of thing. But I wanted to show you musicians. It's nice for that because it integrates with Bandcamp, or you can just sell your music on here using the e-commerce solutions. And if you want to get under the hood and get really nerdy, you can do that. They even have Git access, so you can pretty much change everything if you know what you're doing. And they don't limit you to these simple themes. You can do just about anything you want. There's now also a mobile app that allows you to manage everything on the go, and so far that's only on Apple. I'm pretty sure there's an Android version coming pretty soon. You can make logos with this. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So here's our website that we've created with Squarespace. Very clean and elegant. You click on an item, you fill it in. It's very easy to add color options, add sizing options, add pricing options, weight options. It all ties together with ShipStation, so it's got a lot going on. And if you guys need a website, we recommend that you check it out. Now back to the regularly scheduled tech. All right. Speaking of more car problems, Google's driverless, Gargle's driverless cars. I didn't know this. They can't spot potholes. Wow, this freaking Irish coffee. They can't spot potholes, and they can't drive in heavy rain, and they can't drive on all roads. I didn't know all of these limitations of Google's car. Is this like a propaganda article against Google's cars? This is pretty intense here.
No, it makes perfect sense. I did not know this. This was actually very fascinating. This article led me to do a lot more reading than was just in this article. So it turns out the secret sauce for Google's driverless cars is that they have a sensor car that is driven by a person, and that sensor car collects an absolutely insane data set from A to
maps.
B. Like, yeah. I mean, millimeter accuracy, just completely insane stuff. And so they use that to make a map, and the camera systems on board and the real-time systems on board on the car really rely on a lot of that data set. I mean, it's not, I think the fix for avoiding potholes is probably doable, but there are a lot of other things like operation in the rain and avoiding pedestrians and things like that that are going to need a lot of work. But they get this big data set with this data collection car, and they crunch all the numbers on it, and then they sort of feed that to the car, and then the stuff the car has to deal with in real time is dramatically reduced. That's how they did that. That's the silver bullet, and that's why that worked. And so it all makes sense now.
I mean, what we're really going to need, and I think Google is going to be working on this, and we'll talk about this in part 2 of the tech coming up in a day or so. But I think Google is going to need a much smarter car. And I think they might be able to develop that with some artificial intelligence. Or maybe they could just have Android drivers. You know, when they finally get that all worked out with some quantum computing, they can have Android drivers. That'd be kind of interesting. And then you could just talk to your driver. I think it would be a lot more natural for a human being to trust a humanoid figure, whether it was a robot or not. Just someone sitting in the passenger seat, and then you could speak to them just like, you know, okay, Google, okay, robot, take me here, and okay, robot, is the Blockbuster video still open? And the robot would be like, what are you, from the 80s? But you know what I mean. That kind of a thing. You're on the screen.
I'm totally getting visions of Johnny Cab from Fifth Element in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, I didn't know all these things, but let us know what you guys think of the Tesla article, and let us know what you guys think about Google's driverless cars. Now that you know that they are not as smart as we thought they were, how do you feel about them now? All right, let's move on and talk about fake cell phone towers. Dun, 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 dun. That was good enough, you think? Is it more sinister than that?
No, it's considerably more sinister than that. Because, see, the really sinister thing about the intelligence agencies are that you don't know when you're being spied upon. You theoretically have no way of knowing when you're being spied upon. Whereas these fake cell phone towers, you did not know you were being spied upon until someone set about to build a thing to detect that you were being spied upon, and then, ta-da, there it is.
Yeah, someone built the Crypto Phone 500, and apparently it shows up as a Samsung Galaxy S3. When like something's looking at it, they're like, oh, it's a Samsung Galaxy X3. No, it's a Crypto Phone 500, and they can detect what's a real cell phone tower and what's a false cell phone tower. And the funny thing here is there's all these fake cell phone towers, and I want to mention that this is not like an actual physical tower. Like, people are outside, they see the cell phone tower, and they're like, is that a real cell phone tower? Or is that one of them government cell phone towers to watch me? No, they're not always physical towers, and there may be a couple somewhere. We even found out that there were some in Florida that were artificial physical towers, but it's usually just showing up on your device as a tower, and then it will take your device, and if you're like in a 4G area, it will jam your device so that it either runs at 3G or 2G, which is very insecure, and then it will eat up the rest of your bandwidth. And a lot of the devices that they've been finding have been emanating from military zones. So they're not exactly sure. Some of these could be run by hackers, of course, and they could be trying to pick up any personal information they can get from your phone when you come in range. But a lot of them, in fact, it's here in the article, it says that most of them they drove by were in U.S. military zones. And they also speculate that the NSA is probably not behind this, because does the NSA need a tower? The NSA is up your butt already. It does not need a tower. It is already living inside you like a host. You're just a host for them. So they don't really need it. But who else could need that? I mean, the CIA, DOJ, who else could be using this? Maybe local law enforcement officials could be using this kind of information to track where people are. I don't even know.
It's entirely possible. You know, we've read about small scale cell towers like Stingray, and there was another brand.
That's what Stingray, yes.
I think Hellstorm, I think. These two devices are quote-unquote commercially available. Theoretically, anybody with $10,000 in the right connection could buy one of these mini towers, but these towers are actually large enough that in a populous area, you know, it's basically taking over the whole area. And the crazy thing is, it doesn't actually service the calls. All it does is relay your call to another real tower, which is another way that they were detecting. Now, this article also mentions that, you know, they were getting over the air probes to their phone that should not have been there, and they don't know why that was happening. If that's an attack on the phone, they characterize it as an attack, but there's not enough information there to tell. But 17 cell towers scattered throughout the U.S. so far that they've detected. That's pretty scary, and what's really scary is that we don't know who or why. I'm a firm believer that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and all this stuff done in secret and in shadow, that's not good for us as a society, and that's not good for the world stage.
That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, let's move on, and let's talk a little bit about ISPs. We've got a few fun things to talk about, and it's not just going to be about the USA, even though the bulk of it is, but We do have some stuff to talk about in Austria coming up, so stay tuned for that. Not Australia like I did the other day. That was funny. I was like, hey, Australia's got some stuff going on. Yeah, no, it was Austria. Anyway, so this Comcast Time Warner merger, it needs approval in a lot of the major cities, and it looks like they're getting approval from the mayor of Chicago right after they gave him $100,000.
Womp, 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 womp.
I don't even need to say anything about that. That's just Rahm Emanuel, man. Why is he still there? Why is Rahm Emanuel still there? Jesus.
Because $100,000 donations. I mean, he's got all this corporate inertia behind him. So how can a normal person possibly stand up here?
Yeah. Oh well. Well, apparently, in order to appease regulators, Comcast had to shed a lot of members, like 2.5 million members, and then I believe Charter's picking up some of them, and Time Warner's shedding some members as well. But anyway, all these members that are being shed. At first, they were, the new company was called Spinco. And somewhere someone was like, if we call it Spinco, we're probably gonna get made fun of, and it's gonna be in history books as like, worst things that ever happened. So they've changed the name to Greatland. How's that have a nice sound, nice ring to it there, Greatland. So
Greatland connections.
Yeah, Greatland. It looks like there's going to be a bunch of them across Kentucky, even around the middle of Kentucky. I'm wondering if Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, actually Illinois, the bottom part of Illinois, looks like all through Ohio and all that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, things have already gone to hell on the internet front as far as Time Warner managed territories in that whole area. I'm sure that anyone can tell you. The really amazing thing here is that this rebranding. It's like the rebranding that comes to mind is like when Blackwater, it was like Cerberus, and then it was Blackwater, and then it was Cerberus. It was like Blackwater was caught killing a bunch of innocent people, and they were like, we'll just rename ourselves and it'll be fine. And so it's like Comcast and Time Warner are synonymous with like the most terrible, dysfunctional. It's like remember that the American Medical Association would totally give you clearance to kill that person if that person, if these companies were an actual person. And it's like, I'll just change my name and I can live on. And it's like, no, dude, let us euthanize you. It'll be fine.
Oh man. Speaking of stuff that needs to get euthanized, let's move on here and talk about Netflix. Now, Netflix, well, they don't need to be euthanized. That was a terrible segue. But Netflix
let's
right now...
Let's euthanize this segment and move on.
Yeah, just euthanize what we're talking about right here. But anyway, Netflix, they are urging regulators, the FCC and that sort of thing, they are urging them to allow municipal broadband or to step in and stop the states from stopping municipal broadband. So it's interesting that Netflix is now getting into the fight because... let's face it, Netflix has been losing customers based upon the bad business practices of Comcast and Time Warner. So I wanted to mention that, but it's getting a little late here, Wendell. Have you seen the time by chance?
Oh no, it's Rant 30.
It is Rant 30. So AT&T, they don't like municipal broadband. In fact, they don't think it's fair that the government should allow the municipal broadband, number one, and number two, they think that they should be receiving tax breaks, not municipal broadband. They don't think that they should be receiving any assistance. And I mean, it's funny. They want a level playing field here, and they even say that it wouldn't be a level playing field if municipal broadband and like for instance in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in Wilson, North Carolina, and places like that, if they were receiving any help from the government, they don't think that would be fair. But almost in the same breath, they say, well, we should be getting assistance from local governments, and we should be getting tax breaks so that we can build out better networks. And I mean, did it totally
the 1996 Telecommunications Act called, and they would like their $300 billion back.
I can't even believe they brought that up. They've been getting beyond the 1996 Telecommunications Act. They've been getting so much support from local municipalities. They come in and they make local municipalities sign exclusive contracts, and they promise all this nonsense, and they almost never deliver any of it. And they have the balls to show up and say, well, we need tax breaks, not these municipalities. You should give us tax breaks, and we shouldn't allow them to do anything. We shouldn't allow these municipalities to do anything. And it makes no sense. No sense, AT&T.
What's really funny is the FCC over the last 5 or 6 years has commissioned these various relatively independent studies about internet access and how do we do internet access in rural America, and rural America is where the heart of America is, and blah blah blah. You know, how do we do this? And they've consistently found that there's something called the it's like the rural it's like the rural, I can't remember, it's the rural wiring fund, but it's got a catchier name than that. And Universal Service Fund, that's it. And that is designed so that, like, okay, let's say that you've got, I don't know, an apartment building in Manhattan. There's going to be, say, I don't know, 3,000 residents in that one building. Well, the cost of wiring that building is a single fiber optic cable, some equipment in the basement, and you're done. But all those people are going to pay, you know, $200, $300, $400, $500 installation wiring fees. Those are going to subsidize the more expensive wiring fees of rural America, hence universal service. Well, that was a thing until 96, and then in 96, at&t and other telecommunications companies said, hey, you know, if we still should collect this universal service fund, but instead of it going to the government and then back to us, we should just earmark those funds for infrastructure upgrades, and that would simplify everything, and it would be just the most dramatic thing ever. And you know, we could deliver 45 megabit symmetric connections to a little shack out in the middle of nowhere because fiber optics. And that was a thing that was actually said, that was believed by politicians in 1996. And so fast forward to today, that little shack out in the middle of nowhere, they're like, well, they might be able to get a 3G wireless connection, and that's really the same thing as a fiber optic connection, so that should be okay, right? Like, we didn't actually run anything out there. We just pocketed the money.
Well, that's what's going on in that whole nonsense. But yeah, I just can't believe that they keep, I don't know. And then they're also fighting against net neutrality, which brings me to the next point right here. Of all the different comments received, you know, by the FCC for net neutrality, only 1% opposed net neutrality. So 99% of the people who contacted the FCC about net neutrality were for net neutrality. 1% were against it. And here's the other interesting thing. Typically, when you know, there's a large amount of people contacting the FCC, about 90% of those are just standard forms. You know, like you get those things from change.org or something, and you just click here, put your name in, and you click send, and they just get a blank form. Well, this time, only 60% of those messages that were received were forms. 40% of the people actually took time to write a personal custom message or personalized custom message to the FCC. That is huge. And that says a lot. And that's really cool that you guys are out there. I'm sure some of you guys out there in the audience, if not all of you, have done this, have sat down and written a little letter, or even filled out a form but put a custom, note in the bottom. I think it's really cool that everyone's making their opinions known. And now, if the FCC goes against net neutrality overall or fails to reclassify these as Title II, then it's really going to show that they are only siding with 1% of the people who commented, and that's a big deal. So
I think it's worth pointing out that this was actually, it was I think the actual numbers from the thing was like 0.5% plus or minus 0.5%. So it's 1% at most, but it's 0.5% with a margin of error of 0.5%. So that is a vanishingly small number of the 1.1 million comments submitted. And that is pretty clear that everybody that submitted is like, this is a terrible situation, and it seems like we're headed down a bad way, and we probably shouldn't head down that way. We should probably do something different because this seems really bad, and it doesn't mean anything is going to change.
Something else that needs to change, the anti-piracy groups are completely out of control on a global scale. I'm talking like New Zealand, Australia, Germany, Gemma is like freaking crazy, man. The UK, the USA. These anti-piracy groups are out of control, and what they're basically doing is they're trying to keep things the old way, and they're trying to stop the new way that information should flow. So in Austria, it's very interesting. The VAP, that's their big anti-piracy group over there. They've sued four local ISPs, UPC, I don't even sure how to say this one, Tele2, and A1. I think it's DREI, D-R-E-I, I don't know. Anyway, they sued all four of those without a court order or anything, just because all four of those would not take down links that they demanded be taken down. They didn't get a court order, they didn't get a subpoena, they didn't get anything. They just, basically called them up and said, hey, you have to take these links down because we say so, and we're the anti-piracy authority. And when those, four ISPs failed to do so, now they've sued them. They're completely out of control. And I'm sorry for all the guys in Austria that have to deal with this BS. We have to deal with it here, of course, with DMCA takedown notices gone rampant. Germany has to deal with it with GEMA. I mean, it's turning into a global thing where there's this huge resistance towards the digital flow of information. And it just seems odd to me that they wouldn't adapt and change their business models, because there is a lot of money to be made if you just put the content right there where people want it, and then allow them to share the content in ways like with Twitch videos, where someone can listen to a song and say, oh my God, I like that song. Let me go buy the freaking album. Got to stop that. That's the old business models. What is wrong with their thinking? They're missing out on so many business opportunities. Give us a call. I would be happy to sit down with you guys and offer some consultation. It'll cost you a lot of money, but you'll make even more.
For me, the problem here is that this system is too much a shoot first and ask questions later system. Because, imagine the not too distant future probably where there's socioeconomic or political revolutions, and the citizenry need to decide their direction, and the citizenry will use the internet for communication. Putting in all these kill switches where somebody can just hit a button and get something taken down with no brain power or thought put into it, that's the real problem.
Speaking of that exact thing, let's take a look at what happened to Kim.com. So his personal record, the record that he made himself, or the album that he made himself, that silly music album, right? He's received multiple takedown notices for that album on his service, Mega. He owns this album. He owns Mega. He put it there as a means to share it with other people, and then he gets DMCA takedown notices. People go there, and the DMCA, just like the shoot first, ask questions later, it automatically becomes unavailable until it's guilty until proven innocent. So now he has to go and prove his innocence on his own website. And what's even funnier is one of the requests was made by IFPI, and they claimed that the link infringed upon the copyrights of several different artists that were not even Kim.com. So their claims are completely bogus. That shows you how fucked up the system is. And then Kim.com is sitting here with like, guys, my own album on my own website has been taken down because of your bogus requests. And that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. So we clearly need an overhaul of the system. I don't even know if that's funny or sad. Somewhere in between.
And it's happened several times now.
Yeah. Yeah. Over 20% of all the takedowns were bogus.com told us. And that's on his Mega service. And let's face it, Mega is a place that offers users the ability to go on there and put encrypted files. And I'm sure people do go on there and use it for whatever purposes they want, legal or not. But the way they've got it, the way Kim.com has it set up, he doesn't know what you're doing with it. He's just giving you guys a service. And it's the same. You guys could do the same with even iCloud. Should we talk about iCloud for a minute? Want to talk about iCloud for just a minute?
We can talk about iCloud, but not in the way that you're expecting, because I think somebody already closed the browser.
It's fappening. It's fappening.
Oh, God, no.
All right, we're going to talk about this garbage. I didn't even know who Jennifer Lawrence was until this stupid thing happened. How bad is that?
This thing is so stupid, and we're not even going to talk about the thing that's stupid. Well, okay, basically what happened was a rather large, an inconspicuously conspicuously large. I don't know what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying either.
Basically,
going with it.
Somebody leaked a huge collection of private and mostly nude celebrity photos on the internet, but it's a very large collection apparently.
I don't even. I mean, Apple is saying, like, everyone's saying it came from iCloud, and lesson number 1. If you're going to put stuff on a cloud service, don't put stuff on a cloud service. Like, what are you thinking? You don't have control over those servers. Are you going to... That would, to me, that's like going and putting your stuff in someone else's basement, trying to hide it. Let me just go hide this in somebody else's basement. That'll be a good idea. No, it won't. That's lesson number 1. I don't know. What's lesson number 2 here? I'm sure we've got plenty of lessons from this.
Somebody should compile all the little things that I think into a list, like the Ferengi rules of acquisition. Probably somewhere around Rule 67 would be something like, make sure that your cloud service's password is not 12345, because that would be bad.
Yeah, and then apparently some of it, I guess some of the hackers from, who's that guy, 4chan or 4chat? What's his name? I don't even, some guy named 4chat, I think his name was.
That is the whole other dimension to this. So it's like the media coverage of this has been like, there's, a disgruntled system administrator known as 4chan and an individual that is known as 4chan and blah, blah, blah. But I've watched a few of the clips online, and granted that a lot of these news networks hire anchors that are as dumb as a box of rocks, but by this point, I think that they would know that 4chan is a website. So instead, they seem to put on this act where they feign stupidity, and I think this is a psychological tool that these people use to manipulate the audience to be like, well, you don't know what this is, and that's okay. You don't have to feel bad about it because I'm going to be like, well, I don't know who 4chan is, and I'm going to make my eyebrows very large and my eyes big and wave my hands around like a moron, and so you'll feel better about not knowing what's going on. And to me, that kind of thing around anything to do with technology, sort of whipping people, not just technology, but anything really, but sort of whipping people into a frenzy and telling them it's okay to be ignorant, that is the most egregious disservice that you can do to humanity. They're hurting America.
Yeah. We could probably make a whole separate video on that with some like triumphant, ending to it, like a go forth type thing, and not go forth and stop being stupid. But yeah, we'd probably be preaching to the choir with our audience.
Ignorance allowed to fester turns into idiocy.
And that's all we pretty much have on television right now. The other thing that kind of bothers me about this is pretty much all I've seen all over the internet lately. And I mean, there's real stuff going on. I mean, it's oh god, a naked body. There are people, getting their heads cut off in the Middle East right now. Journalists getting their heads cut off in the Middle East. There's stuff going down. There's the NSA doing crazy things. There's real stuff happening, and people are freaking out about this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I like the celebrity news segment that came on right before that on CNN, because I think they were talking about like J-Lo's stretch marks or something. And it's like
on CNN.
It's like they, so I don't know if it was on CNN. It was on some news channel.
Probably was CNN.
It's like somebody was on vacation somewhere and something about birth stretch marks. I don't even know who it was. It probably wasn't. I don't know who it was, but then it's like, hackers on the internet have leaked nude photos for privacy violations or whatever. And it's like, well, the person you were just talking about was on vacation and probably didn't want to be bothered by the paparazzi, and you're going to talk about stretch marks on national news? This seems so stupid that I might have an aneurysm.
This is CNN. That's the way of it. All right, I think that's pretty much all we've got to talk about today on this episode. Yeah, we probably could have expanded on a few of those things, but you guys can do that in the comments. And right now it's time to make the hardware episode. We've been working on a lot of hardware. We've just got just now got the Sapphire. It's the brand new 285 from AMD, the R9 285. And it's the ITX sized version. It's supposed to be slightly faster than the 260, the GTX 260 ITX that I have. So that might be going into the ITX rig, but we've got to test that. The Intel CPU will be in tomorrow, so we're finally going to start doing our testing on X99 for real here in this studio. We've got a bunch of tests coming up for. We've got all kinds of fun stuff coming up, but we're going to be doing some battles pretty soon. Like I just said, the 285 versus the GTX 260, and then we've got the i5 versus the new AMD 8 cores, and we're going to see how they stack up, price to performance, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll start making some recommendations. I'm not just gonna leave it up to you guys. I'm gonna tell you guys what I would do, because I think maybe you guys want to hear that. And that's what I've been paid to say by AMD and Intel. Yay! Thanks again to Squarespace. They've been doing a hell of a job with our website. And if anyone from Squarespace is watching, I will love you way more if you incorporate BitPay or Litecoin, Dogecoin, all those kinds of things that our audience very, 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 very much wants. We will love you very much if you do that. You guys should do it. I've decided I will drive down there and do it for you. All right, that's the end of the video, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Wendell, any closing comments?
No, I think I'm good. See ya.
All right, see you.